All right, folks, we are now recording this session. So in your conversation activities and for-school lesson plans, remember to include video links, YouTube links, pictures, and any other details of materials. But we're going to look at enabling objectives and terminal objectives very specifically because it's important that you identify what are the enabling objectives. Enable. What does the word enable mean? What does that mean?
It means like they are able or they can use it for specific purposes, like you learn some vocabularies for some specific purposes, like we say vocabulary about the vegetables or fruits when you go to grocery, something like that, I mean.
Yes, that's correct. So and the word enabling by itself, what is the definition of the word enabling?
To make somebody able to do something.
Yes.
Make somebody be able to do something.
That's correct, Sapita, exactly. So it's being able to do something or helping somebody to do something or assisting. So that's where identify, describe, comprehend, produce, these words are key to expressing enabling objectives. So by the end of during this lesson, the interim steps during the lesson, students will be able to identify, they'll be able to describe, they will be able to investigate information about the topic, whatever the topic is. So enabling objectives help along the way. They enable, they allow the student to be able to do something. So what is it that the student is able to do during your lesson plan? That's what you need to identify in 3 or 4 brief little sentences. Those are the enabling objectives. Terminal objectives, this is the benefit to the students at the end of the lesson. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to, and this is the benefit to them, these items that you list here. So again, 3 or 4 items. Oh, I just saw in the chat box, Jay asked me to share the document. My apologies. I thought I was sharing it. Yes. There you go. Now you can see it. So enabling are the interim steps where the student is able to identify, describe in 3 or 4 sentences to express that, what they're doing during the lesson. And then the terminal objectives, the benefit to the students at the end of the lesson. This is what they'll be able to do at the end of the lesson. So they will be able to successfully do this, these various items, these 3 or 4 items that you list. This is where they're learning to do it, enabling objectives, and this is where they have learned to do it, and now it's a benefit to them. Okay? Any questions about enabling objectives and terminal objectives? So be very thorough with those and express them in fairly extensive detail. Now, another item, or a couple of other items that are very important, are vocabulary lists, grammar samples, and written exercises. So when you're preparing this lesson plan, you should have a vocabulary list of the words that are appropriate, and especially new words that you think the students might not know about yet. You should have a vocabulary list that you would distribute to the students. so that they can find those vocabulary items. So when you're developing your lesson plan and you say, oh, I will distribute a vocabulary list, don't just say that, but also include with your lesson plan, include the actual vocabulary list. So let's put here a vocabulary list. So the topic is haunted hotels. What are some examples of vocabulary related to haunted hotels?
Haunted, frightening, ghost.
Yes. So
Yeah,
let's start out with the actual words in the title. Haunted hotels. We need to make sure they understand what a haunted hotel even means. So definitely those words, and frightening, some other, it really wants to make this bold. Some other words.
Like gloomy. I mean, kind of a house which they are like dark. We say gloomy. If I don't know, I'm right or no.
Yes. Yes. Other words for the vocabulary list.
Broken windows.
That's good. As soon as we see broken windows, we immediately have the idea that something is wrong or something bad might have happened. So broken windows are definitely a strong visual indicator. That's good. Other words, folks.
Miserable, I can say maybe.
Yes. Other words.
Can you hear me?
I beg your pardon. What was that?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you, Mojgan. Yes, go ahead.
Actually, I remember that there were some new words, new highlighted words in the reading. I think it's a good idea to teach those new words before the reading in the list because
Very,
they need to know about the
yes,
words.
very, very good idea. So you might take the new words, you might move point number 7, you might move it up right near the beginning of the lesson,
Yes, exactly.
like this. That's fine. So Moshkan, how would you do that? What would you do if you were going to teach the new words on the vocabulary list that we've got below here? How would you do that?
Actually, I usually give the students a kind of matching exercise so that they can match the words with the correct meaning. Sometimes I ask some questions to make sure if they know the meaning or uh, but usually I somehow give them a matching exercise.
That's fine. That's a very good one. And if you were going to do that, then you would provide an example here of that matching exercise. So you would actually write out what the matching exercise would look like. So if we had the word haunted in one column, and then they choose over here They would choose from a list such as this. What's another word we could have on the matching side here? So they're matching haunted with one of these other words. What's another word we could use here?
I think depending on the levels, we can synonyms. For example, we can say haunt means, for example, taken. I don't know, something like that maybe.
I couldn't hear that word. What was that word you said? Something like what?
Taken.
Taken?
Yes.
Okay. So
I think it should like taken by ghosts. We can write, or it should be just one word, or it could be sent. Oh, it could be sentence. Okay.
yeah, it could be a short phrase, certainly. So then with our instruction, we could put here choose all that match, because they might decide to include which ones would they include for haunted. If they were choosing all that matched out of the list, which ones would they choose? Out of A, B, C, and D,
B and D,
which ones fit haunted? Pardon, say that again, please.
B and D,
B and D. Right. Okay, so do you see how that works? So you would, if you were using a matching exercise, this would be a lot longer. This is just one little example, but this would be a lot longer. You might have 10 words and then a list of the matching items to go with each of those words and providing the answer over here. So this is all the type of information that you need to include in your 4 skills lesson plan. Anything that you're describing that you're doing, you need to give an example of it in here. So we've got each student is given words or phrases to listen for when they watch the video. So again, you would put here examples of phrases, and you would list the phrases that you're going to hand out to the students. You'd actually list those phrases here. All right, does that make sense? So you need a lot of detail in the description part, the procedures of the lesson section of your lesson plan. You need a lot of detail here. Okay, does that make sense?
Well, actually, I have a question. We teach these vocabularies before going through the reading, or
Well,
after the reading?
that's a very good question. And that's going to depend on a few factors. That's going to depend on how you choose to approach the lesson, but it's also going to depend on the proficiency level of the students. So if it's a beginner proficiency level or lower intermediate, you might want to do the new vocabulary list, going through a matching exercise ahead of time, because they might not be able to read easily if they don't understand the words. But if you're dealing with a more advanced intermediate or advanced level students, then you can probably do the reading, then focus on any vocabulary that they did not understand afterwards. So it depends on a lot of variables. There's no absolute correct method for doing this. So much of it depends on the situation. And in our particular example, where's my cursor going? I lost my cursor there for a moment. In our particular example here, we have said that these are lower intermediate students, middle school. So we're talking middle school is going to be ages 9 to 14, kind of 10 to 14 age group. So with that age group, it might, and lower intermediate, it might be a very good idea to do a matching exercise at the beginning of the lesson to help them understand the vocabulary before you get to the reading. Okay?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay, any other questions at this point, folks? All right, so we've selected a video, and we're not going to go out to the internet and find a video about a haunted hotel or a haunted house. You could certainly do that. But in discussing the video, what are some other questions that we could ask the students to do here, to respond to?
We can ask them to discuss about cultural factors that every country, for example, believe in ghosts, or how they refer, I don't know, to ghosts. Again, it depends on their level. For example, they can discuss about, is it a myth that ghosts exist or not, and then they can share their ideas about these beliefs in their groups, and then they can report the results to the whole class.
That's good. That's good. Yes. Any other points, folks? What other questions could we ask them?
Like maybe they can students talk about some experiences maybe they have ever had. Actually, rarely happen in these situations. I mean, about the ghosts and this kind of thing. But I think it's not a bad idea to ask them, as it can help them to like use the vocabulary or the topic in their real life.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes, that's a good one. So they might not have had any experience with ghosts, but they might have had, they might have had experiences where they were scared by what they thought was a ghost, and they can talk about it, of course. Any other questions that we can ask them to discuss? These are good questions because these will work at any proficiency level. Any other questions?
Talk about or discuss about the books or movies they watched before previously?
Yes, good. That's good. Any other points, folks?
Well, actually, I don't want to mention any question. I have a question about the vocabulary list. There should be a limitation about the vocabulary. I mean, like 10 new words, 5 new words, or there is no limitation.
There really is no limitation, but I would suggest the guideline that you use connected to that is that the particular choice of reading that you've selected or the video that you have selected should not likely have any more than 10 to 15 new words in it, because if the list becomes too long, they're not going to remember them anyway. If it's too big a list, then the reading is probably too complex for them. It's probably too advanced. So that's where it's always very important to select your authentic material at an appropriate level for the language proficiency of the student group. Does that help to answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yes, so you always want them to be stretching a bit, and you don't want them to always read everything that's very easy. You might make a selection about haunted hotels that is a very easy reading for them, and then give them another selection that's a bit more difficult. And giving them an easy reading would get them into the mindset, into the frame of mind about reading about whatever the topic is, in this case, haunted hotels. And then if you give them a bit more complex reading, that will stretch their learning of new vocabulary, and they will move into a new area of learning through that slightly more advanced reading. That's where you can introduce other words that might fit the topic. So now that we've added some things, we're going to put here, they've done some group work, 3 in a group, and then review steps number 3 and number 5. So number 3 was where the students were given the words or phrases from the video, and you've got examples listed here of what you're handing out for them to watch for. So you review that, and then we also do a class review of these conversations they had in small groups. Okay. Whoops. That's not what I wanted. Okay, we'll save it later. So, any questions at this point in time?
While they are speaking about the questions that we have already mentioned, there should be any kind of a correction about the fluency or accuracy, or no, they're just talking.
Well, that would come under the area of assessment or evaluation. During group work, the teacher is monitoring conversation. And I would suggest that you are correcting any major grammatical or pronunciation concerns. Because what is the key thing that we are wanting them to do here? What's the key behind all these activities? They're interacting with each other. What is it we want them to be doing?
To be able to communicate fluently.
Exactly. So that's why I inserted the word major here, because if they have some minor grammatical or pronunciation concerns, then I would let those go, because you might be stopping them constantly throughout the session otherwise. But if it's a major issue and it's affecting the communication or understanding of the others, then that's when you can step in and just make some adjustments to help them through that part. And you can say it the way it should be said. They can copy it, and then they will understand it better that way. So the assessment, there's always assessment occurring. Assessment is ongoing. During class time. Also, assessment of what else. So you're assessing during class time. What else are you assessing?
The vocabulary, the grammar, and the whole concept of being hunted.
Yes, that's exactly what you're assessing on an ongoing basis during the class time. But what about after class?
After the class. I think their production, they're applying the new learned vocabulary and grammar in production, in utterances.
Yes, and how do you assess that?
If it is written, we can ask them to provide texts to present to the class, or practice conversations before the class starts, and when everybody is ready and present in the class, they can present the conversation to the whole class.
Yes.
Both written and oral, both of them, in speaking and writing.
That's good. And so what you've just described is this extra class work. So the assignment we give is for them to create their own scary story, bring it to class next day, or read a scary story, and present a verbal and written report the next day.
Yeah, I think this is what I also mentioned last session.
Yes.
That was my own suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And you just described it again. So also the assessment of production and application of new learning through extra class assignment.
I think these two kind of overlap with each other. Am I right? I think this is the reason I make this mistake all the time.
What do you mean overlaps?
I mean, the practices which can act as an assessment and the extra class work.
There's definitely an overlap, yes. But you need to always make sure that you express it very clearly. You need to say it exactly what you're thinking so that whoever is reading this lesson plan and assessing it knows what you're thinking.
Uh-huh.
So, yes, there is overlap, and you might think that we're kind of saying the same thing twice, but you need to explain it under each heading so that if I'm the one marking this assignment and I read this paragraph, but then there's no extra classwork described, my question would be, what is the extra class assignment? I would
Yes, yes, you're right.
ask you that question, and then I would dock marks for it. I would take marks off because you did not explain the extra class assignment. So you need to explain every detail about every heading. And yes, it does seem like there's overlap, and there is overlap. It does seem like you're duplicating information, but it's all about clarity. Because
Yes.
remember, there are a couple of main reasons that we're asking you to do this assignment. One main reason is that it's not just for you to create an assignment so that it can be marked. That's the third reason. The first reason is for you to have the experience creating these assignments that can be useful for you in the actual classroom. The second reason is for you to create these assignments so that if you ever had to be away for any reason from school on a certain day and there was a supply teacher covering for you,
Mm-hmm.
the principal could take this lesson plan, give it to the supply teacher, and the supply teacher could deliver it with no problem because everything is written out in such great detail. And then the third reason is, yes, we're asking you to do the assignment so we can mark it for you. So those are the three reasons in that order that we ask you to do this assignment.
Yeah.
Okay? So go into lots of details. Lots of details. We've already started on the list, the vocabulary list in the reading section. And then we go back to the second viewing of the video. And I think it was Jay who suggested using closed captions on the screen while video playing. And because that will help the students to read what they hear being said. They can read the words and hear them at the same time. And that's double confirmation, visual and audio confirmation simultaneously, which is always beneficial. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
Any questions or comments, folks, about any section of this lesson plan?
Excuse me,
think
I
the
have a
other
question, Daniel.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Mojgan. Mojgan,
sorry.
you go ahead. I can wait.
Uh, the other point or the other benefit for having extra class activity, I think, is to activate the students' vocabulary that they just learned during the class, so that we can make sure they comprehended the meaning of the vocabulary or not when we somehow correct assignments. I think it can be a way of testing their comprehension of or vocabulary production.
That's very good. Yes, and very helpful to include a statement such as that in the actual assignment. Yes, that's good. Very good. Thank you, Moshkin. Zara, you had another comment?
I had a question actually.
Okay, that's fine.
Regarding allocation of time, since this is a 4 skills lesson plan, we need to consider all of the 4 skills together. I have a question about the time allocation to each of these skills. Do they need to be the same or no?
Not necessarily. No. No, you can have different time allocations.
Depending on the contents and the material, right?
Yes, exactly. And the proficiency level.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
So, for instance, you might say, "1 minute's not going to be enough for that. Let's give that 3 minutes to introduce the topic and ask for that understanding." Then you might have this matching exercise. You might spend 5 minutes in here. You might spend another 5 minutes here. Including the examples of phrases. The video that you watch might be 10 minutes. You don't need to watch an entire video. You might have a 1 hour long movie. You don't necessarily need to watch an entire movie. You could watch maybe 10 minutes of it, a portion of it that you select. Okay?
Yeah.
Then you might give them 10 minutes for working in the small groups. They discuss those in the small groups. And then you come back and you might do 5 minutes for each of the groups. We've got 3 groups here with, I think we have 9 students in this class, if I remember correctly. Number 7 to 9, yeah, so we've got 3 groups. Let's give this 6 minutes, so each group has 2 minutes to do their little presentation. This, we're actually going to move up. So as we added more parts and they're doing their little group meeting and group sessions here, then we say, oh, we gave them 10 minutes. Yep, we've got 10 minutes to prepare. And then we give them 6 minutes to present. There we go. And then we move on to the reading. We've got a vocabulary list, second viewing of the video. So what are we up to in minutes now? We've got 8, 13, 23, 33. We've got 33 minutes already. 39 minutes. So you're almost at 40 minutes right now for the reading, before you get to the reading. So the reading with the vocabulary list, the reading might be 15 minutes in length with the vocabulary list, and working on what they heard in the video, the words that were in the video, not in the video, students identifying the ones they heard. So you might have 15 minutes on that. And then this could be second viewing of the video is another 10 minutes. The PDF, we've got short stories. You might have 15 minutes allocated to that. Then you get into the writing, you might have 15 minutes allocated to that. So what are we at now? We're at, here's 25. There's 40, 46, 56, 66, 71, 76, 79 minutes. If you're at 80 minutes, you've got two 40-minute classes here. So I would type that. You divide it into two sessions.
So the time allocation differs for each skill.
It certainly can, yes.
Mhm.
It probably will. It doesn't have to, but it probably will.
And it's okay if they're different. I just wanted to know this.
Yes, it is okay if there are different amounts to each of the skills. So I would do that in this particular instance. Okay, because as we've discussed before, you know, a 45-minute length of time for a class, a 45-minute length of time, where do we go here? Right here. 45-minute length of time, especially for this age group, is kind of the limit, and then they need a break. And speaking of breaks, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back. Okay, folks, so we'll come back in, I've got 2:04, let's come back at 2:10, let's come back in 6 minutes. And I'll see if I can get my camera working again before we come back. Thanks, folks. See you shortly.
Okay. Okay, see you.
right, folks, so we're back. So you can see with the extra building we've done today in this 4 skills lesson plan, we're adding a lot of detail into the document. Are there any questions about this extra detail or any questions about the overall 4 skills lesson plan development?
Yes, can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please.
Tomorrow I just want to start writing these conversation activities, and I'm doubtful if I can succeed in it or not. Is it okay if I do only one of them and send it to you and get a feedback from you and then do the rest, or no? I just want to make sure first and then go through the rest of the process.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Zara, but if you do the conversation activities, and of course those are focusing just on speaking and listening, if you do the conversation activity and follow through all the details of all the headings that we've gone over, because the conversation activities include all these same headings, right?
Yes, I know they are different. I know lesson plans are for the 4 skills and conversation activities only for speaking and listening. I know they're different.
Correct, but the only difference is that with 4 skills you add reading and writing. In the
Yes.
speaking listening of the conversation activities, you will still go into detail about whatever the speaking and listening activities are that you're including. You know, whatever you design, that's the conversation activity part.
Yes.
And then the
Yes,
four,
I know. I mean,
by adding reading and writing, you turn it into a 4 skills lesson plan. But aside from the reading and writing sections, the conversation activities and 4 skills lesson plans, the listening and speaking parts are quite similar between them. And you'll be
yes.
fine. It just, include in your conversation activities, include your YouTube video links, include pictures and a list of all the materials, and, actually paste pictures into the Word document of the conversation activity. So you'll be fine. You don't need me to.
I hope so.
Well, I'm sure you will be, and if you do that with each of the conversation activities, then you should be just fine. But you don't need me to mark them twice for you, you know. And when you do
Mhm.
submit these assignments, submit them. Don't send them directly to me because I can't mark them unless TESOL sends them to me for marking. So all of your assignments, submit them directly to info at, I'm typing it in the chat box, TESOLCanada.org.
Yeah, I only wanted to know your opinion on that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I understand everybody has the same concern. Every group has the
Yes.
same concern. And I would suggest to you that you're going to be just fine. You don't need to spend the time sending it to me and getting feedback and then waiting for me to get back to you. Just do them and hand them in. And when they are assessed, if there's any significant issue with it, we'll tell you what that is, and you can redo it, or add that item and send them back in.
Don't we lose mark in this process?
No, no. If you make a submission, if you submit an assignment, whatever the assignment is, and you get a certain mark back on it, and if we say you could improve it by doing this, and then you do that and resubmit it, you don't lose marks for resubmitting.
Okay, that's great. That is great.
You would
That's a
just get
good
it. You
news.
would just get a new mark. That's all.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I would say to everybody, these conversation activities and lesson plans, they have a lot of detail in them. Yes, that's true. They have extensive detail going into lots of lists and lots of items. Your conversation activities should be 2 to 3 pages each in length. But remember, that's including pictures and lists of words. So it's taking up a lot of space. And your 4 skills lesson plans, because they add reading and writing, those will likely be 3 to 4 pages in length for each of them. But these are just lesson plans, folks. Don't stress too much over them. Just do them. You see, we all have a tendency, and I understand your thinking. I went through it too when I was doing mine. We all have this thinking that we want to create a perfect product. I know that. You're perfectionists. I get it. I understand. But what you need to do is create a template. Create yourself a template with all these headings, all these titles, and copy that template 10 times or a dozen times, whatever number of conversation activities you need to do. Create a template with just the headings, then fill in the details for each of the conversation activities that fits the topic you've chosen for that one. So turn it into a little system. Create your template with the topics and then fill in the details for each one. So don't spend so much time thinking about it. Just get down and do it.
Excuse me, Daniel.
Yes,
Can we have these PowerPoint slides as a sample for creating our own 4 skill lesson plan?
I am happy to. This is not a PowerPoint. This is just a Word document. But I'm happy to send this to you, as I sent the previous one a week ago. So this is just the very same document. I've just been adding to it today, right? So I'm happy to send this to you. If you do want me to send this document to you, just a second. Typing my email address, and I can't type and talk at the same time. Because if I tried to type and talk my email address at the same time, we'd end up with an email address that doesn't work. So I'm happy to send this document to you that we worked on today. It's the same one as last week with just these additions and highlights that I put in as we were talking today. So if you want this, by all means, send me an email. Just put my email in the chat box. Send me an email and I will respond back to you and I will attach today's document. Now I've called this version 2. So I've updated the name of it so that you're able to keep them straight from each other as well when you've got these two of them going in your computer. Or when you receive this one, just delete the first one, because the first one is now redundant now that we've got this new document. So certainly I'm happy to share this with you. That's the whole point of it. This is
Thank you.
it's a teaching guide, but it's a teaching guide that you folks developed. You built it, so really you own it. So send me that email and I'm happy to return it to you. Okay? Any other questions about the conversation activities or the 4 skills lesson plans?
I've just sent you an email, Daniel.
Okay. Very good. Oh yes, a few of you did. So that's fine. I'll get that back to you after the session is over today. Okay, I'll reply back to those
Thanks a million.
a bit
Thank
later.
you so much.
You're very welcome. So, any other questions about the conversation activities or the 4 skills lesson plans, folks? there goes my camera again. Goodness. Okay, no other questions? No other questions about that? Okay, then we're going to move on now to a new topic. And this new topic is about teaching business English. So, teaching business English, stop and think about it for a moment. If you're teaching business English, who would you expect the students to be? What kind of people would those students be?
Employees,
People,
businessmen.
Yes,
yes,
very
companies
possibly
and
both.
the people.
Yes, employees or business people. Yes, very good. What age group do you think they would be?
Like nearly 30.
I beg your pardon, Anisek, what was that answer?
I think that they should be like almost 30 years old.
Very likely they could be age 30 to 50, perhaps even. So, older young people and middle-aged people, business people. Yes, exactly. What about the language proficiency level? What level do you think their language proficiency would be at?
They're supposed to be at least pre-intermediate level, I think.
Very likely pre-intermediate, yes, or they could even be more advanced. Yes. So I have two PowerPoints that I'm going to share with you today. And I really am still here, even though my camera keeps knocking itself off the desk here. But I really am still here. So if as long as you can hear me, you've got my voice. Okay, I'm going to stop even trying to get the camera to work. As long as you've got my voice, you know I'm still here. Okay, this is not a recording. This is really me. So I'm going to share the first PowerPoint with you because the first PowerPoint is connected to traveling and finance and that whole conversation about trade, global trade. The second PowerPoint will get into a little bit more technical detail about finance and accounting. So the very first PowerPoint, are you able to see that PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just enlarge it a bit so you can see it better. That should be a little bit better. So, why do we travel? Can somebody answer that
Maybe,
question? Why do we travel?
yeah, maybe for better job opportunities, or yeah, if it's about the business, maybe for a better job opportunity.
That's one good reason. Other reasons that we travel.
For better education.
Good. Yes. Other reasons.
For experience,
Definitely. Other reasons.
To have fun.
Yes. And if we put those into priority, maybe the one about having fun is the most important one. But we travel for a variety of reasons. Why do we trade? Why do
To make
countries,
money.
sure, to make money, but why do some countries trade things they have to other countries for other things?
To supply the needs.
Yes,
Or maybe, yeah, or maybe for a better like a financial position of that country to improve it.
certainly. And because some countries have things that other countries don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So we trade to satisfy the needs of supply and demand for products or services around the world. What is finance? What does finance mean to you? What does that mean?
The investment or the financial or the monetary aspect of doing something is finance.
Absolutely, that's a very good explanation of large finance, country finance, corporate finance. What else can finance mean? What else can it describe?
Like management of money, like a large amount of money.
Yes, definitely. It can be the management of a large amount of money. On a more personal level, how would you describe finance?
Bills.
Oh, definitely. Yes. You know, paying the bills each month. That's definitely a personal level of financial commitment, and the resources to do it are important as well. So there are many different levels, many different levels of finance, from the personal level up through corporate level, up to government, up to countries, up to global level of finance. So everything is on multiple levels. Trade has been occurring on the face of the earth for thousands of years. The earliest securely dated sites showing human presence in the Americas, North and South America, goes back, and Ka stands for kiloannum, which is 1,000 years, goes back 15, 16,000 years for the Americas. So trade has been going on for thousands of years, millennia. It has been occurring around the globe. Trade, these three major cultural areas in the Pacific, Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia, form a triangle of trade routes going back hundreds and hundreds of years. These areas provided the first intercontinental traveling for trade that occurred, and that green arrow is pointing to South America, because genetic studies suggest Polynesian migration across the Pacific Ocean to South America about 800 years ago. So there were people from Polynesia who followed that green arrow over to South America, which is over here, and genetic analysis is showing that the people in South America can be traced back to Polynesian ancestry. So trade, global finance, that's been going on for many, many, many hundreds of years. We have this gentleman. Anybody know who it might be? He's based in Europe. Very important for traveling across.
Is it Christoph Kolom?
I'm sorry, say that again, Zara, please.
Christoph Kolom, if the pronunciation is right. In
Uh,
Persian, we call it Christoph Kolom.
Christopher Columbus, you're thinking of?
Yes, yes.
No, Christopher Columbus he left from Spain and came to
Yes.
North America. But this gentleman left from Europe and went across overland, went across Asia to the Far East.
Marco Polo?
Yes, yes. Very, very famous for what he developed,
Yeah.
as known as the Silk Road, across Asia, through Asia, across to the Far East to China. And those travel routes existed from 114 before Common Era until 1450s Common Era. Business and trade flourished for thousands of years. For 307 years, even after Marco Polo finished his travels, in 1602, the first chartered corporation on the globe was founded in a European country. would anybody know which European country that
I think it
first?
was Italy.
No, you're close, but Italy was not the first country that had a chartered corporation. Whereas actually
Mm,
a company that had a charter and sold shares of its corporation in 1602.
is it on Eastern Europe?
No, no, it's a European country.
So it would be England.
No, no, they wished, they hoped it had been them, but it wasn't them. It was close to England, though. Go on to the mainland. Go on to mainland Europe. Just a little bit
Maybe
south.
France
France.
or
Well, again, France really hoped that they had been the first one, but it wasn't France. It was very close to France, though.
mm,
Spain, Germany.
Poland or Norway.
Well, yeah, pretty soon we will have named all the countries on the European continent. So that's okay. It is a country that begins with the letter N, but it is not Norway. It's from
Netherlands.
Netherlands.
Netherlands. Yes, it was in the Netherlands that first chartered corporation on the globe was founded. And that's the end of that PowerPoint, because now we're going to go to the other PowerPoint, which picks up and continues on the story. So now we get into finance and accounting. And we have the first, we've established that the first corporation, the official chartered corporation on the face of the earth, was in 1602, founded in the Netherlands. It was known as the Dutch East India Company, officially called the United East India Company, but it was founded as a mega corporation. It was a government-directed amalgamation of several rival Dutch trading companies in the early 17th century, March 20th, 1602. The first corporation on the face of the earth. So the way they did this was the Dutch government at the time took a number of merchants who were competitors, constantly competing against each other, and they said to them, okay, you guys, we want you to work as a group. We want each of you to put money into this corporation. We will give you shares in the corporation depending on how much money you put in. If you put in 100 guilders, we'll give you 1 share. If you put in 200 guilders, we'll give you 2 shares. It was that kind of allotment of the shares between the merchants who put up the money to create the United East India Company, known commonly as the Dutch East India Company. That Dutch East India Company was very much like Amazon is today. The scope of products and shipping globally was tremendous. They dealt with East Indian spices, Indonesian coffee, Formosan sugarcane, South African wine. They were a transcontinental employer. They did foreign direct investments at the dawn of modern capitalism. They were the beginnings of what we know as stock market indices around the globe these days. So let's back up a little bit. In this PowerPoint today, we're going to have a look at stock market history, a few global stock market indices, just a few of them because there are hundreds. AAA rating, Canada AAA rating reduced at the beginning of the pandemic, and three primary asset classes. So this PowerPoint, I'm showing this PowerPoint to you folks as an example of what I would use in a teaching business English class environment as a way of introducing more advanced vocabulary and more advanced concepts related to stock market indices and how they function, how they work. And I would develop and organize conversation and written exercises out of this kind of a PowerPoint. So this type of a PowerPoint could be the basis of a teaching business English 4 skills lesson plan. The Toronto Stock Exchange, Canada's main stock market and the largest one. There are several stock markets in Canada. There's one in Montreal, there's one in Alberta, there's one in British Columbia, various commodities, indices across the country. Now, the information in this PowerPoint is not necessary for you to learn and memorize as information that you are required to know for the TESOL course. This is just simply an example of a PowerPoint that I developed to use for teaching business English and accounting. The Dow Jones is the US stock exchange based in New York. And when people refer to, I mean, in North America for sure, when people refer to, oh, the stock market was up, the common reference is to the US stock market because it's one of the largest stock markets on the face of the earth. And the US is the largest economy on the face of the earth. Certainly much bigger than Canada. Canada's economy and Canada's market capitalization as a nation represents less than 2% of economic growth on the face of the earth. The US represents 50 to 55% of economic growth on the face of the earth. Who knows what the second largest economy is on the face of the earth right now?
Maybe China?
That's correct. It is China. It is not London. This is London, England. In London, the Financial Times Stock Exchange, or commonly referred to as the FTSE, is the stock market index in London, England. In Frankfurt, Germany, it's the DAX. That is their main stock market. Now, remember, I'm referring to main stock markets here. In Germany, there are many stock markets for different commodities, for technology, for many different things. There are different stock markets, but these are the main stock markets in a few of the countries. In Hong Kong, it's the Hang Seng Index. Hong Kong has been often referred to as the financial center of the globe. Hong Kong, until recently, was controlled by the British Empire. But the island of Hong Kong was under a 99-year lease, which ran out a number of years ago, recently. And now Hong Kong is still a financial giant and a key linchpin in finance globally. Despite the fact that Hong Kong is a very tiny little island. It's not big. Then there's the Shanghai stock market in China. Again, the largest stock exchange in mainland China, run by the Chinese government, their Securities Regulatory Commission. In Tokyo, it's the Nikkei. The Nikkei index is Japan's main stock market. After we leave stock markets, we come into one of the other major types of assets that exist on the face of the earth. Stocks represent ownership because if you own stock in a company, you own a piece of that company. Another type of asset class is bonds. And bonds represent debt that is owed by a company or a country. There are different companies that have bond ratings, bond rankings, such as Standard & Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's. Those are three main bond rating organizations. A AAA rating by one of these bonding companies, a AAA rating is the highest rating you can have. In June of 2020, prior to June of 2020, Canada had a AAA rating. In June of 2020, Fitch, one of those bond rating organizations, reduced Canada's bond rating to AA plus. Now, maybe AA plus doesn't sound too bad compared to AAA, but in bond ratings, that can be a very big hit because it indicates that Fitch did not think Canada as a country was as able to pay its debts now after the pandemic started as it had been before the pandemic. Because remember, with the pandemic starting, just about every country on the face of the earth did this. Canada as well started giving money to citizens and racked up a debt, a country debt, a nationwide debt of trillions of dollars, as has just about every country on the face of the world during the pandemic. So the biggest impact for this decline, this dropped rating, was because when the coronavirus pandemic hit, Alberta's oil production, Alberta, Canada, the oil production stopped. The wells stopped producing. Remember back to the early months of the pandemic, when every country was under stay-at-home orders and lockdowns, nobody was driving anywhere. There was no need to put gas in the car. Before the pandemic, with my business, I was driving 1,000 kilometers a week usually, visiting clients all over Ontario. The pandemic hit, my car sat in the driveway for a few months. When I actually went out to use it again, I had to get a new battery. Didn't run my car for several months because there was no demand for gasoline or oil products. Alberta's production basically stopped. And that impact on the Canadian financial situation was devastating because oil produced by Alberta is a key part of Canada's national gross domestic product. We look at different classes of assets. Equity is one. That's stocks. If you own stocks in a corporation, you own part of the corporation, a little piece of it. You have equity in the company. Fixed income. We talked about bonds. If a company or a country issues a bond, they're loaning out, or they're giving a bond to somebody who loans money to the company or the country, so the company or the country can raise money to do research and development, or they can build infrastructure. A country can build bridges, highways, that kind of thing. And that forms a part of what is known as fixed income. So with a bond, if I have $10,000 and I buy a government bond, an Ontario government bond, I give my $10,000 to the Ontario government. They use it to do whatever they want to do with it, and they pay me interest on my bond. And that bond might have a maturity date of 10 years or 20 years. At the end of that time, I get my money back, my $10,000 back, and I earn the interest along the way. So fixed income includes bonds as well as marketable securities. And this is a very long list that I won't go into right here. Excuse me. The third asset class. On the face of the earth, we have basically three asset classes. stocks, bonds, and cash. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, cash is king. Well, cash is legal tender, currency or coins, anything that can be converted into cash very quickly is also referred to as a liquid asset or cash. And those are the three main asset classes. So you see in this PowerPoint, I've introduced certain terminology and classifications in a teaching business English environment. I would have various exercises related to the different slides, related to terminology. I might have a business English class that is all bankers or finance people. And I would want them, I mean, they're going to know all this stuff in their own mother tongue if they're business people, but they need to learn the English terminology. So we would have in-depth exercises, written and speaking exercises on all of these items. I can't play the video. This is just a screenshot from my phone. I used Investopedia very often to get a lot of these slide images. And I left that up on purpose because that gives the credit as the source of the information. Remember, it's always important to credit wherever your information is coming from. So that's why I left this Investopedia as part of the picture on the slide. Any questions or folks, or any questions or comments, folks, about these slides? Okay, just going to go on and finish, because now we go into the field of accounting. Gross domestic product, what is it? Balance sheets, corporate balance sheets, and personal balance sheet. Let me ask you a question. As individuals, have you ever sat down and written out the details of your personal balance sheet? As individuals, when we're talking about our monthly income and expenses, what do we call that if we write down the details of, you earn this much money, you pay this amount for your rent, you pay this for your hydro, you pay this amount for food. What do we call that exercise of doing that?
Would you say it's like financial planning?
Absolutely, it's an aspect of financial planning. And doing the monthly income and expenses is really doing a monthly budget. And that's definitely part of financial planning. Exactly. So we're going to look a little bit at that as well in these next few slides. What is gross domestic product? Gross domestic product is the total monetary or market value of all the finished goods and services produced within a country's borders in a specific period of time. So when we say goods, finished goods, we're talking about for instance, let's talk about car manufacturing. So we're talking about the value of all the finished automobiles that have been produced, rolled off the assembly line, and they're parked waiting to be sold. That is a finished product with value. The automobiles that are still on the production line, they're only partly built. They do not form part of the gross domestic product because they are not a finished product yet. So it's important to establish that it's only finished goods and services. So it's a service that has been completely finished and given a final dollar value or an invoice applied to it, that's what goes to putting together the value of a gross domestic product monetary assessment. Balance sheet definition. Balance sheet, as Aaron mentioned, is really about financial planning. It summarizes a company's assets, liabilities, and shareholders' equity at a specific point in time. And you could say, well, the same thing is true for an individual. You can do an assessment of the assets, whatever you own, the liabilities, whatever you owe, any debts you have, and shareholders' equity, which is cash that you have on hand at any specific point in time. So these are financial statements. Typically, balance sheets are referred to for corporations or countries even. Rarely do people refer to having their own balance sheet, but I do. I am a certified financial planner. I do financial planning, and I always refer to people as having their own balance sheet. I say you need to understand what you own as your assets, what you owe as liabilities. You need to have an understanding of your debts. You need to have an understanding of the cash that you have on hand and how it's going to be allocated, because a balance sheet for a corporation is fine, but a balance sheet for an individual is just as important. So here's just a sample of a fictitious company, ABC. So ABC company has these assets listed, and then they have these liabilities listed, and the shareholders' equity. Now all these numbers are in thousands of dollars, so shareholders' equity $100,000. That probably means that when this company started, the owners or the shareholders put in $100,000 to get the company started up. That's usually what the shareholders' equity is. It's money that the owners, the shareholders, have put into the company to get it started up. Therefore, it forms part of the liability side of the balance sheet because the company owes the shareholders that money. The shareholders can take that money back at any point in time with no tax consequence because they didn't get any tax relief to put the dollars in. It was just money going into their own corporation for operating expenses typically. Just another example of another balance sheet. These are just pictures I took from the internet. Then we get into personal finances. Organizing assets and liability categories just as corporations do. And a cash flow analysis, which is the monthly budget, is always helpful. A publication that I subscribe to, Wealth Professional, has indicated that after the pandemic, Canadians will need to revise their personal financial goals. Then this is the details of an article from Wealth Professional, went into those details. This is back in this was, I believe, July 2020 was the date of this article. At that time, a little over a year ago, 30% of Canadians said that they were barely able to survive their expenses each month. So that is an example, folks, of the type of PowerPoint. Excuse me. It's an example of the type of PowerPoint that you could use when teaching business English. And the kind of terminology that you could develop. This is just not working, this camera. It's the type, shows the type of terminology you could develop and use in a class situation. So I just wanted to go over those with you as examples. And like I say, the content of those two PowerPoints you just saw, that content is not necessary for you to know for your TESOL courses. They're just examples of a style of PowerPoint that I created. Okay, folks? So, any questions? Any
Hey,
questions?
I have a question.
Certainly.
Does that mean that we need to somehow memorize a large list of terminologies and vocabularies related to business, English, and or accounting? Or no, it's just a kind of model or something like
Mojgan, you do not need to memorize any of the information in those PowerPoints. They were just an example of the type of PowerPoint that you could design if you were doing a teaching business English course. And some of you are doing conversation activities and 4 skills lesson plans that include a teaching business English. And so you could use these as sort of an idea to build something in your particular assignment that you submit. So that's why I wanted to show those to you. They're just an example, but you do not need to memorize any information from those 2 PowerPoints. No. Okay?
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, folks?
Excuse me, Daniel.
Yes, Zara, go ahead.
Are we going to discuss teaching business English more in the following sessions, or no? That was it.
That was probably it. Yes.
Okay.
Did you
But
have
I think
a specific question?
not a specific question. I needed some practical advices on your part, in order to let us know how to teach English with a business content. These were great, materials you presented us with. They were perfect and I really enjoyed it. But in a classroom, are there particular skills, any specific materials, or any other professional suggestion to give us, from you as our instructor?
Well, when you get into specific areas such as teaching business English, just for sake of illustration, let's assume that the business people in your class, let's assume that they are in their 30s and 40s, age-wise, and let's assume that they're intermediate level language proficiency, and they need to become more advanced. Let's assume also that they are a group of people in the industry that manufactures photocopy machines. So maybe
Okay.
maybe it's an employer that manufactures photocopy machines and camera equipment, for instance. So we talked before about using authentic materials when you're doing lesson plans. And what would authentic materials be for this type of situation? You've got a group of people that they're photocopy technician people, or they work in the industry of manufacturing or selling photocopiers or selling camera equipment. What is some authentic material that you could use for them for reading and doing written exercises from? What would you say
For
is
example, like contracts, actual contracts, or minutes of understandings,
exactly? Yes,
or actual negotiations.
that's one perfect example. What is another example of authentic material, reading material?
I don't know, videos like having a group of people, two sides of a contract, negotiating on financial or any other aspects of
Yes,
I don't know, importing or exporting some goods.
yes, definitely. Now you're focusing on the sales side of things. Let's think about the production and the operating. So you've sold a photocopier to a company, you've gone there and the photocopy machine is installed. Now what do you need to do?
To provide support.
Yes, exactly. And how are you going to do that?
Having a person present the items that the producing company will provide the customer with, naming the supporting elements.
Exactly. And as part of that exercise, what are you going to include?
To operate how to operate it, or like an operating manual?
Exactly. Yes, exactly, Jay. The technical manual, the operation manual. So go to an operation manual
Yeah.
and use that as use that as authentic reading material. And
Yeah, that's perfect. Yes.
build conversation activities, build 4 skills lesson plans with that as authentic reading material. Have exercise sheets that include vocabulary words that you think might be new words, and have assignments based on the production manual, and go from there and use it that way. So always think in terms, whatever the group of students is, doesn't matter if it's teaching academic English, teaching business English, doesn't matter if it's teaching children, whatever it is, whoever the group is, think in terms of authentic material and real experience. And real experiences.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay, does that help to answer your question?
Of course it does. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. Any other questions, folks?
I know time's up for this class, but I'm not sure if I have time to go through this. But for online sessions, oftentimes we need to split the class into small groups, right? How do we do it in this platform? If you don't have time, we can go through next week or Saturday.
At the top of your screen, do you see a word that says breakout sessions? You might not see it. Do you see it across? There's a menu bar across the top of your screen. Do you have a menu bar across the top of your screen?
Sorry, I'm using iPad. Maybe it's different from computer setting.
It might be, I don't know. It might also be the fact that because I'm the host, I have breakout sessions. So I click on breakout sessions. I think you need to be the host in order to be able to do this on whatever the platform is. So I go to breakout sessions, I enable breakout sessions, and I say, create, assign participants automatically, and create the assignments. And I start the breakout session. So hello, Jay and Mojgan. Here's the breakout session. I'm in your room right now,
Okay, I hear you.
but you need to be the host in order to set that up.
I see.
So did all of you end up in a little breakout session with 2 or 3 people in it?
I didn't go to the breakout session, but I was assigned a group that you could say join now or join later.
Oh, I see. That's fine. Sure. That's fine. So in order to do breakout sessions on any platform, I've never done it on the Cisco platform before, but I'm pretty sure you must be the host of the session in order to set up the breakout sessions. I've used it on Zoom and Google Meets before, and you know, it works out fine there. But again, I need to be the host in order to set that up. So does that answer your question, Jay?
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, folks? Okay. Well then, ladies and gentlemen, we are finished for today. We're just a few minutes past our time, so not too bad. I actually managed to cover the material and didn't go too far over time today. So thank you very much for joining us. I don't know if I will see you on Saturday. If you're writing your midterm exam on Saturday, good luck to you. And I will see you again next Monday. So stay safe, everybody. Be careful out there. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.